Before we dive into this very video here, we have Honda Accord, which we want to use as a case study. This is a MAF airflow sensor. However, there is a problem if you look at from here to here. You need to be very smart to understand that there is a problem here. There should be a clip within this space here, and there is no clip. So what do you think is going to be happening? A lot of air is going to be missing out of this very place here, and there's going to be an error code. Guess what? Let me go and turn on the ignition so we see if this car have a check engine light. However, I won't be going into diagnosis because we have a lot to cover in this very video. I'm just trying to give you a sample of what could be wrong. That doesn't mean that the mass airflow sensor of your car is bad, which most often times you will be heading to the pastor to replace it without knowing that you don't need to replace this. Here we are. Here we go. There is a check engine. So I've seen this check engine even before now. When you start up the car, the check engine remains.
Hi there, I am Dr. Cool Auto Fix. I will be teaching you 9 symptoms of bad MAF sensor replacement cost and how to diagnose it. The mass airflow sensor or MAF sensor measures the air entering the engine to calculate the correct air-fuel mixture. The mass airflow sensor MAF is an important part for car engines to function properly. It measures how much air that enters the car engine and then sends this information to the engine control module, which then adjusts how much fuel the fuel injectors should inject into the engine. Unfortunately, it sometimes happens that the MAF sensor gets worn or bad. In this content we will talk about the symptoms of a bad MAF sensor, location, and replacement cost. Symptoms of a bad or failing MAF sensor include 1. Check engine light illuminates. The engine control module monitors all sensors in the car engine to ensure that everything is okay. If a sensor sends an incorrect signal, the ECM or PCM will turn on the check engine indicator light. Therefore, if your MAF sensor is faulty and sends wrong information to the engine control unit, the check engine light will illuminate your dashboard. However, the engine control module does not always recognize a faulty MAF sensor, so it may still be defective even if there is no engine light on your dashboard. But, if your check engine light is illuminating, you want to check the diagnostic trouble codes first with an OBD2 scanner. 2. Slow acceleration. Your engine needs a perfect air-fuel mixture in the combustion chamber for optimal performance. A faulty MAF sensor can cause a faulty air-fuel mixture, and it can cause many strange performance issues with your car, and slow acceleration is one of them. If you notice that your car is much slower than usual, there is a significant risk that your MAF sensor is at fault. 3. Hesitation, rough or jerky acceleration. As you may suspect, a faulty fuel injection caused by a poor MAF sensor can also make your acceleration rough or jerky. This is usually because the air-fuel mixture becomes too lean, so the car engine starves due to lack of food, and this will cause it to jerk. If the air-fuel mixture is too rich, it can also extinguish the ignition created by the spark plug, which causes the acceleration to be rough. 4. Hard starting condition. If you notice that your car has become more difficult to start in the morning, there is a chance that a bad air mass sensor is causing the problem. All car engines are very sensitive to the right airflow mixture at the exact starting moment. If the wrong amount of fuel is injected into the engine at the moment, your car may not start at all or just crank a little longer than usual. 5. Black smoke from exhaust pipe. Black smoke from the exhaust pipe is a strong sign that your engine is getting too much amount of fuel compared to the amount of air. Therefore, if you realize that a lot of black smoke is pouring out of your exhaust pipe, there is a significant risk that your engine runs too rich, which a bad MAF sensor could cause. You can also notice a little more gray smoke from the exhaust pipe than usual if your engine runs rich. This can also damage your catalytic converter, which is very expensive, so you definitely want to fix it as soon as possible. 6. Rough idle. The car engine's most sensitive situation for engine problems is at idle and during the starting moment. Therefore, it is very likely that problems will occur at idle also. If your idle has become very rough lately, or if the engine is stalling, there is a big risk that your MAF sensor has gone bad. 7. Misfires. Misfires occur when one or more cylinders fail to burn the fuel. To burn the fuel correctly, the engine needs 3 things: the right air-fuel ratio, ignition, and compression. Therefore, if the air-fuel mixture is very far beyond the specifications, it may cause one or more cylinders not to ignite at all, and this will cause the engine to ignite incorrectly, causing a misfire. If you find any trouble codes related to misfires, it can be a sign of a bad mass airflow sensor. 8. High fuel consumption. This last symptom is probably the most obvious because you already know that a faulty MAF sensor is causing a faulty air-fuel mixture. Therefore, a faulty MAF sensor can cause fuel consumption to either go up or down. You may think that reduced fuel consumption is a good thing, but it can actually damage your engine, which will make it more expensive in the long run. 9. Car starts then dies. This attribute is often peculiar to some car brands such as Mercedes, BMW and most European cars. Due to the fact that MAF sensor input data is very important to the peak performance of the engine, in order to avoid damage to the engine which will result into very expensive repairs, this manufacturer sets a threshold parameters which when this sensor performs below it, will prompt the PCM to shut down the engine. Where is the MAF sensor location? The MAF sensor is located on the large hose between the intake manifold and the air filter box, often installed on the air filter box. Its exact location varies from manufacturer to manufacturer, as they fit the sensor based on the engine design. You can use a repair manual to find the exact location or use the internet for a quick search. Check out the pictures for a clue as to where it can be placed. Cleaning a dirty MAF sensor often, the problems associated with the mass airflow sensor occur due to dirt and debris buildup on the sensor head. This particle accumulation over time results in poor performance of the sensor. Cleaning the MAF sensor is often relatively straightforward. Just remove the sensor head from the MAF sensor housing and carefully clean the sensor's hot wire with an electronic cleaner or a specific MAF sensor cleaner like this one. However, the sensor's hot wire is very sensitive and you can easily damage it, therefore you don't want to touch it with your hands or with a towel. Just spray it and let it dry, it should be enough. Diagnosing a failing mass airflow sensor. MAF sensors can often be quite expensive, and therefore it is important to make a correct diagnosis before choosing to replace the MAF sensor. Diagnosing a MAF sensor is often relatively easy if you know what to look for. But to diagnose the MAF sensor correctly, you must have correctly measured values for your specific car engine and model, which you can find in a repair manual. Connect an OBD2 scanner and check the live data from the MAF sensor on idle. It should be 0 milligrams, while in some car make will be just about the figure approximately to the size of the engine in grams. Start the car and check the values from the MAF sensor again. It should go up when you rev the engine and down as the engine RPM decreases. If the value is stable, there is either something wrong with your diagnostic tool, MAF sensor, or the wirings to it. Remove the plug to the MAF sensor and check for corrosion. Check your repair manual to measure the sensor and the wirings to it. You can find out more about clean or replace the MAF sensor if faulty or repair the wirings.
Still on the mass airflow sensor, let me quickly add this so that you guys can be able to understand this, because I know definitely this very video did not explain that vividly before even getting to the end of it. So let me explain this critically before we move further. Now, if you are having a poor throttle response, engine underperformance, engine hiccup, or sometimes your car runs rich or runs lean, all right, and sometimes your engine takes time to start, and you scan your car and you're finding a trouble code relating to mass airflow sensor. I repeat, do not replace the mass airflow sensor, right? The reason why I say this is because most of the times, due to a bad air filter which you have not replaced for quite a long time, is going to be allowing some dirt particles to contaminate the mass airflow sensor. And now when you have a lot of dirt that's actually covering it up, which you can't see with your naked eyes, then it's going to shield the mass airflow sensor from delivering the right input values it's supposed to be given to the ECM of your car. And when this happens, throwing all these error codes, and not just only error codes, putting up all these symptoms such as hesitation upon acceleration, poor throttle response, engine hiccuping, running lean sometimes, and running rich sometimes. So when you start experiencing any of these symptoms which I'm talking about here, or even hard start, or the car starts and stall, if you start experiencing any of these issues which I'm talking about here, and you are seeing an error code on relating to mass airflow sensor, do not replace your mass airflow sensor. You're gonna save yourself a whole lot of $500 or even $400 to $300, depending on the car making model. If it is most European models, they're gonna be billing you almost about $500 for a very OEM mass airflow sensor. So in that regard, I want you to go ahead and get a cheap mass airflow sensor cleaner and use it to clean it out, allow it to dry. Before cleaning it, make sure you take it out of the vehicle.
MAF sensor replacement cost. The average MAF sensor replacement cost is between $140 and $550, depending on the car model and labor costs. A mass airflow sensor costs $100 and $400, and you can expect the labor costs to be $40 to $150. The MAF sensor is often quite expensive, as you sometimes have to replace the whole MAF sensor housing also, but even just the sensor itself can be quite expensive. Fortunately, it is often very easy to replace the MAF sensor and is done in 10 minutes for most car models. You can often do this yourself if you only have basic car knowledge. MAF sensor FAQs. What happens when the MAF sensor goes bad? The MAF sensor is a vital part of the car engine, and therefore a lot of things can happen to your car engine when it gets bad. The most common things that happen are a control lamp, poor engine performance, uneven idling, and changed fuel consumption. How do you test a MAF sensor? To test a MAF sensor, you need a multimeter to measure the resistance in the sensor. To know which resistance you should see on the multimeter, you can look it up in your repair manual for your car model. Can you drive with a bad mass airflow sensor? A bad air mass sensor can cause many problems with your car engine, and therefore it is not recommended to drive with it. However, if your engine is running well, you can drive slowly to the nearest workshop. How often does a mass airflow sensor need to be replaced? There is no service schedule for when to replace the MAF sensor. The MAF sensor is made to last the life of the vehicle, so it should only be replaced if it is faulty. However, you can clean the MAF sensor every 100,000 miles to keep it functional. Now that you know all about this MAF sensor, see on my next video about symptoms of a bad MAF sensor.
Take the mass airflow sensor out of the vehicle, disconnect it from the circuit, and clean it with the dedicated mass airflow sensor cleaner. Before then, allow it to dry completely, dry to touch. Do not touch it with your hands because your hands can also contaminate it. When you can't see any sign of moisture within it, then you can be able to install it back and put it back as it is. Then you can go ahead and start up your car. Do not install it while it's still wet because it's going to create a lot of issues. All right.